Hello everyone, I'm Archie Batra and I'm Editor-at-Large for the St Student newspaper, and I'm delighted to be joined by Stephen Gethins, who's running for the SNP in the general election. So
Hi.
Thank you very much for joining
Not
us.
at all, thank you for having me along today.
So could you just introduce yourself to
Yeah,
everyone, please?
so my name's Stephen Gethins. I'm the SNP candidate for the general election, but I've also been the Member of Parliament for North East Fife for the past 4.5 years. And that means that, as I've been keen to tell everybody, no matter how long you're here for, if you're a student for 6 months, or even better, if you've come here and you're looking to stay, then I've been your Member of Parliament for the past 4.5 years, and it's been a real privilege to be the Member of Parliament for the university, but also for the student body as well.
Okay, brilliant. So just to start off, you've been quite vocal in your time as a Member of Parliament about Brexit
Yep.
and what you think about it. Could you just briefly explain what your position is and what the SNP's position is?
So, Brexit's dominated my time in Parliament. You know, look, I wish I'd spent the same amount of time and energy and resource talking about, say, climate change, poverty, as has been swallowed up by Brexit. But we are where we are. So very simply, I'm against it. I think it's a dreadful idea. As somebody who benefited from Erasmus, from freedom of movement, all these different areas, and whose biggest employer in the constituency is the university, given the research money and the excellence that exists around there, why on earth would I choose to take away opportunities from those that come after me that I myself have enjoyed? So Brexit's a bad idea. We need to stop it. Is that clear enough?
Okay, so a vote for you is a definite vote to stop Brexit.
Definitely. And look, something else that I've done during my time in Parliament, not only is it a vote to stop Brexit, but it's a vote for the only candidate who can go straight back to work the day after the election. So for the past 4.5 years, I've cultivated networks, relationships, worked cross-party. I was one of the authors of the Ben Act, the Withdrawal No. 2 Act, that stopped no-deal Brexit in its tracks. So my name's one of the sort of 10 names that's on the front page of that act. So not only will I say I'll stop Brexit, I've already done it in legislation, but that requires somebody who's already got the knowledge and the networks cross-party to make sure we can do that. And I can go straight back to work 9 o'clock the next morning on the, well, it depends when the results declared, but you get the picture. I can go straight back and I've got those networks. And look, that trust takes a long time to build up on a cross-party basis.
So if you were returned to Parliament in the election, what would you do? What is within your power to stop Brexit?
Yeah, so similar to what I've done before. Look, I'm the only Scottish Member of Parliament who worked in the European institutions, which means I take that level of knowledge and those relationships as well into it. Now, it seems strange to sit and appeal for people to vote based on the first 6 weeks of Parliament, but actually we've only got 6 weeks between Parliament going back after the election and the next Brexit deadline, and those will be amongst the most crucial in influencing and shaping all of our futures across these islands, across the UK and across Ireland as well. And I want to get straight back to work and keep doing what I was doing before, and that was blocking Boris Johnson, working with colleagues in the Green Party, the Labour Party, the Lib Dems, Plaid Cymru, and some of those independent Conservatives as well.
So doesn't that also mean that because of the SNP's very nature, in that it only fields candidates in Scotland, any influence it has in Westminster will be inevitably less than perhaps other parties?
No, I don't think so. I mean, we're much more influential, for example, than the Liberal Democrats who field candidates across the UK. You know, we got...
But maybe perhaps compared to the Labour Party?
Well, but the Labour Party is not clear on Brexit. So, you know, I've lost count of the number of times that I've filed into voting lobbies to vote against Brexit, vote for a people's vote, not to be joined by the Labour Party. So the SNP has been the strongest, most united and biggest pro-Remain party in the United Kingdom. And, do you know, I wish that weren't so. I really do. But if people want a reliably strong anti-Brexit candidate, then they've got that in the SNP. And that's something we've got a really strong track record on. That's not to belittle our colleagues who have worked with us very closely in the Green Party, Lib Dems and Plaid Cymru at all, but it is a fact, and every poll tells us it will continue to be the case, that the SNP will remain the biggest and most, you know, the biggest pro-Remain party in Parliament.
Okay. And is this a wise stance to take, do you think, given that fewer people voted for the SNP in 2017 than voted to leave in Scotland?
Look, it doesn't matter if, you know, you talk about the wise stance. Sometimes we don't do this enough in politics. What is the right stance? And I firmly believe that remaining in the European Union is the right thing to do. Now, I don't think that's costing us votes if you look at the polls, but as somebody who worked in the European institutions, who set my educational career based around the opportunities I might have with Erasmus and all these other areas, I could never turn my back on the European Union. You know, I am a strong, passionate pro-European, and if that were to cost me votes, then so be it, but I don't think it is. So, look, let's get beyond the wise things to do, and let's get on to the right thing to do, because that's part of the reason why we're in this mess at the moment.
Okay, brilliant. And so another hot button issue, I think, for a lot of students and a lot of people in North East Fife would be access to healthcare and the future of the NHS.
Really important, yeah.
So I think it's important to stress that this is a devolved issue.
Yes, it is,
so
yeah.
It has been largely under the SNP.
Yep.
You know, the Scottish NHS has survived. Are you proud of the record of the Scottish NHS?
Yeah, and on the, I mean, first of all, look, the Scottish NHS is the best performing NHS in the United Kingdom. Now, that's not to say we can't do better. We must always strive to do better. And you know something else? Even though the SNP's track record is strong here, best performing in the United Kingdom, my boss, if you like, it's not Nicola Sturgeon, it's not Ian Blackford. My boss are the people who live and work in North East Fife. And that's why I campaigned for the out-of-hours service. I put pressure on the Health Secretary over the out-of-hours service. I'm really proud of being able to stand with the students on that. You know, I think that the student body did a fantastic bit of work, and with the local community. And, you know, to be fair, I worked cross-party with all of, you know, we're quite lucky in some ways in St Andrews that you've got 4 councillors from different political parties working together. So I think that's as an MP, my priority always has been my boss. My boss is the people of North East Fife, and that's why I campaigned for the out-of-hours service. Now, we've still got a lot of work to do on that. And I've worked really closely with those involved in the campaign, and I will continue to work closely with those in the campaign. It's my job to stand up for health services in North East Fife, regardless of what any party might say.
And would you attribute this success or, you know, performance of the NHS to generous payments under the Barnett formula?
There's no such thing as generous payments in the Barnett formula. The UK government is responsible for the overwhelming majority of Scotland's finances. The overwhelming majority. Now, we've had £2.5 billion worth of cuts. Austerity that started under the Tory Liberal administration continued under the Conservative administration. And even before that, Alistair Darling, the Labour Chancellor, saying he wanted cuts that were deeper and tougher than those under Margaret Thatcher as well. There were alternatives to austerity. You know, if you look at the acceleration of capital expenditure the Scottish Government tried to do, that in the United States they did a lot more of, even elsewhere in Europe they did as well. There were alternatives to austerity, and you cannot continually salami slice budgets and not expect there to be an impact on frontline services. And that's why, as part of the SNP's manifesto, we want to see increased spending on the NHS across the United Kingdom. Austerity can't go on. You cannot put the NHS and our other crucial public services under the financial cosh like this.
So is that something you would lobby for in Westminster?
Not only would I lobby for it, it's something that's in our manifesto explicitly. We want to see spending levels in England brought up to the same level as in Scotland. What that would mean would be under Barnett consequentials. That should raise another £4 billion for the Scottish NHS to go into frontline services. So not only is it something we'd lobby for, it's in our manifesto, and maybe unlike other parties that are standing in this election, the SNP believes in implementing its manifesto commitments. Okay.
And just finally, are problems within the NHS solvable by throwing money at the problem, or are there deeper issues that need a more holistic approach?
It's not just about money. Money's important. Look, I mean, when you talk about out of hours, you've got people, you know, and I'm glad that we've been successful so far on lobbying for that, and I will continue to do so. But, you know, there are financial implications of austerity. There are going to be implications for frontline services. So it's not just about money, but actually one thing that's been really successful in Scotland, if you look at the way we've tackled knife crime that's now being copied elsewhere in the UK, such as in London, or the way that, you know, we look at benefits and sort of trying to help carers, that is now being looked at elsewhere, with it being praised by the United Nations as well. This is the different approach that's been taken in Scotland and under devolved areas, again praised by the United Nations, is that a public health approach, you know, looking at the broader approach, looking at poverty, looking at education, looking behind the statistics, if you like, so that we have a happier, healthier, more successful country, but for everybody, closing that gap between rich and poor. The other week, there were stats revealed that said that the highest levels of child poverty in North East Fife are here in St Andrews, 27%. We need to tackle child poverty as a part of that. And devastating cuts that have grown the divide between rich and poor are the responsibility of Westminster, and they have an impact on services here as well. We need to stop that.
Okay. And then I think another issue that would have dominated the minds of students, but
Yep.
also local residents as well, would be the climate emergency.
Yes, absolutely.
And each party's response to it. So you've spoken at various protests, like the
Yep.
one in St Andrews. What is the SNP's policy in protecting the environment?
Well, I think first of all, I've been really impressed by the way the student body have worked on this. I've been along. Remember the first climate protest we went to? We had 200 or 300 people at it, and I thought that was good. And then went to the one in the summer. We had 1,500 people on the West Sands, and we even had loads out just the other day as well, including loads of students from Belbaxter too, which was absolutely fantastic. So for the past 4.5 years, I've been the vice chair of the all-party group on climate change. Caroline Lucas and I work very closely together on that. In fact, the Green Party candidate from previous general election, last time they stood, has endorsed me in this seat, given my environmental credentials, given my work on climate change. So that's the work I've done, cross-party. This has to be the #1 priority for this Parliament. Scrap Brexit is a nonsense. It's costing us money. It's costing us political time. Climate change should be our responsibility. So I've worked cross-party. That's my background. As far as the SNP is concerned, you've already got the SNP, the Scottish Government put forward world-leading climate change legislation of reaching 42% reductions in 2009 by 2020. Looks like we're going to reach those targets. We were told they were unreachable, but that means we now need to build on them. We also put forward proposals about taking renewables, having the equivalent mix of renewable in our electricity mix to 100%. We're at 75% in 2017, and we should reach that. So I'd like the UK to be as ambitious as Scotland has been, and I'd like Scotland to be even more ambitious than it has been so far.
Okay. And you don't think that the Scottish economy is too reliant on gas and oil from the North Sea, then?
No. I mean, if you look at it, our biggest industries, you've got financial services, research and innovation. And I'm a bit tired of hearing people talking about the challenges and the economic hit of climate change. This is a massive opportunity. And the reason why the Scottish Government moved towards that big renewables target was not only is it the right thing to do in getting a clean, green energy mix, but if you're the first to get this technology right, you can sell that throughout the world. There are now tens of thousands of jobs in the clean, green energy sector, and that can only grow. It's good for the economy. We can't, I'll turn your question on its head. When you say we can't afford it, we can't not afford it to make that transition at the moment.
But I think what a lot of people, particularly the Conservative Party, would say is if you take these drastic measures, if you mobilise on the scale of World War II, then you damage the economy such that there is nothing left to save.
Do since Brexit, the UK economy has been hit by a £70 billion downturn. I put down questions that even threw £100 million at a PR campaign on a no-deal Brexit, that legislation that I drafted and colleagues had drafted had been ruled out. So I put down the question, how much money are you spending on the climate emergency PR campaign? They couldn't answer me. I put it down 3 times in the dying days of the Parliament, never answered me. That means they must have spent nothing. I'd love to have been proven wrong. So for the Conservatives at this juncture, when they've cost £70 billion so far with their Brexit farce, and billions more in the future, according to their own government figures, I don't think they can lecture anybody on economic competence at the moment.
Brilliant. And then, so just to finish off, you are the only nationalist candidate in this constituency. All the others.
Well, I'm the only pro-independence. Pro-independence candidate. Yeah.
Okay.
That's important.
Party, but,
but they're not Scottish. It's quite important.
Okay. So you're the only pro-independence candidate in the constituency. Just very simply, why do you want Scotland to be an independent country?
Simple. I think that Scotland is an independent country. The independence in Europe is the normal state of affairs. If you look at our neighbours in Ireland who are thriving, growing their economy, opening up opportunities for young people, the same with our neighbours in Denmark. The European Union, with that Council of Ministers and the way it works, is a partnership of equals in a way that the United Kingdom isn't. And actually, I think that Scotland being independent could be good for the rest of the United Kingdom as well. I think that Scotland, given that the rest of Europe knows that we're pro-European, we want to be part of the EU, and regardless of what England and Wales might do in the future, Scotland can be that bridge to the rest of Europe, help rebuild the damaged relationship, and it is a damaged relationship, I'm sorry to say, between London and Brussels, because they'll remain our most important bilateral and London and multilateral relationships, much in the same way as they are for Ireland. And Ireland will thrive, and Scotland can thrive too, and we can have a much more sensible relationship. I want to see an open and accessible and outward-looking internationalist Scotland rather than the isolationism of Brexit. I met an academic the other day, and she's done a clip that's going to go up on my Facebook page, who's just moved here because she was an immigrant to the UK. She came to Scotland because she felt most welcome here, because immigration's a good thing. We want people to come here and to stay here, and we want to be open to the world in a way that the United Kingdom increasingly isn't. And nowhere's a better example of where diversity, openness is a positive thing than here in St Andrews.
Okay. But wouldn't you agree that independence from the United Kingdom and staying in the EU is swapping diktats from London for diktats from Brussels?
No, and I'm sorry. Look, I mean, sorry. Look, have you read an EU treaty? For goodness sake. I mean, look, the EU cannot force its member states to do things. Right? They come 28, make collective decisions. If you have a dispute, you take it to a court. You sit down as a club of 28. That's why it's a bit messy sometimes. The EU could never impose governments that Scotland didn't vote for. It couldn't impose nuclear weapons that we didn't want. Couldn't impose Boris Johnson. It couldn't impose Brexit. It couldn't impose tax regimes that we don't want. And it couldn't impose a lack of action on climate change. All of these, look, pooling and sharing sovereignty with our neighbours is a good thing. But resting that sovereignty in Edinburgh is the thing that counts. Now, can you imagine any other multilateral organisation where one part of it could be forced out of the European Union against its will? This isn't a partnership of equals in the UK. And to compare the UK and the EU with the greatest respect, and I know you've just got to ask the questions, you're not comparing like with like, I'm afraid.
Okay. Well, brilliant. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's good to see you. Thanks for that.